Hello, I'm Bob Wilhelm, and I have the winter blues, a severe case of the winter blues that qualifies to be called seasonal affective disorder. I was diagnosed with it many decades ago, and over the past years, I have learned to cope with it, even to celebrate my seasonality. So I want to share this with you because I know that many of you have either a touch of seasonal affective disorder. It's very human to have that. Uh, and a few of you have severe cases, as I do. And we especially have to struggle with how to cope with this. So let me begin by saying the most important thing is light. Natural light, full spectrum light. All the research that has been done and all the therapy that has been done focuses on all kinds of supplemental things that can be done. So we can use medications, we can change our diet, we can exercise in certain ways, we can reset our body clocks. There are all kinds of things that help us cope, but nothing is as important as light. So light exists in two forms. One is sunlight, and that's preferable, and the other is artificial light that is mimicking sunlight largely. And these are the tools for dealing with the winter blues. The spectrum of light goes all the way from blue to red. Beyond blue, there is ultraviolet, and there is some danger with ultraviolet rays because of the possibility of skin cancer in particular. On the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, where there is red light and infrared light is also heat. We cannot see infrared light for the most part, except for near infrared. And that heat is also a contributing factor to our health. So what we need, what all human beings need, especially if we live in temperate zones where we have shorter days in the winter, is exposure to sunlight and to other forms of light in order to keep healthy, to keep us from becoming depressed, to keep us from suffering from other maladies that come out from the deprivation of light. So we'll talk about this in the weeks ahead. The best you can do is to try to be outside if possible, early in the morning after the sun rises, and to get full spectrum light in those first hour or two of the day. And at night, not to expose yourself to a lot of artificial light, including videos and house lights and so forth, that will disrupt your natural sleep cycle. Again, we'll come back to this in future videos. But I want to end with telling you what day today is. Today is almost the first day of autumn. And you're going to think, oh, Bob Wilhelm is making this video sometimes in mid-September, before the autumnal equinox, when the days are equal, day and night, equal in their length. Well, that's based on the astronomical calendar. And the astronomical calendar is very precise, and it tells you exactly when the sun is farthest away from us, and it tells you when the sun is at its low ebb at the winter solstice, and it tells you when the sun is at high tide at the summer solstice, and when it's balanced in between at the spring and autumn equinoxes. That's very good for some functions, but it's not very good for human beings, because there's another calendar, and I'm going to use that calendar. I do use that calendar in dealing with SAD, and that's called the calendar based on the quarter days. And whatever its origin was, it is much more attuned to the reality of how we experience the seasons as human beings. So, for example, in the winter solstice and in the summer solstice, in the days before and the days after, the length of the days moving extremely slowly. Uh, it lengthens or shortens as little as by a second or a few seconds when you're at these end points. On the other hand, when the equinoxes come, the shift in the day is very, very quick. We notice that in the 2 weeks before and after, let's say, the autumn equinox, we notice how it suddenly seems to get dark. The days are suddenly much, much shorter. So what happens is that our body, not just our conscious mind, but our body is very attuned to the length of the days. And when there is not much change, it doesn't respond to the changes because the day before the winter solstice and the day after the winter solstice are just about identical in their length. So the body isn't picking up any clues. However, at the equinoxes in September and late March, the body is saying, wow, something is happening, and I better adjust to what is happening. Uh, Everything's changing very, very, very quickly. When do we actually begin to notice this? Well, when does our body begin to notice it? When does our body start to respond? And the reality is, it's pretty much in the middle point between equinox and solstice, solstice and equinox. So if you move from the summer solstice in late June and you move up about 6 weeks or so, you come to August 1st. And if you go beyond that into September, not exactly the same amount of time, but it's pretty close. So it's midpoint, and the change is now moving enough so the body notices. And if you have SAD, you will begin to feel that in your body at that time. Now, I have a very severe case of SAD, a very severe case. And I begin to pick up the first clues somewhere around the beginning of the second week of August, end of the first week, August 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, somewhere around there, I get my first clues from my body. I'll talk about that later on. Most people will get their clues later because they're not as sensitive. And so many people with mild cases won't actually begin to feel the effects until we get into October or even into November. So it's very important to follow this calendar of quarter days. It's also called the Celtic calendar. It was created by the Celtic peoples of Ireland and Scotland and Western Europe, and it was the time of their rituals. They began in August, which is called Lammas Day, and it's the beginning of the autumn harvest. The first harvest in autumn happens then. And November 1st, we have another quarter day, and that's what we call Halloween, All Souls, or Samhain in the Celtic languages. And of course, that's a very powerful time in mythology and in folklore and in practices. The next one is February 1st, connected with St. Bridget, the Irish saint. And it's connected with building bonfires and other traditions. And that is when we begin to sense, our bodies are sensing winter is over. And then, of course, we get the mania of May Day. May Day, the last quarter days, the beginning of summer. And it is a very festive time, a time of high energy when all the symptoms of SAD are gone. So we are now approaching autumn, and it's good to begin preparations for the coming winter season now. during the months of autumn, so that when they hit in November, beginning of November, I call it the wall. When the beginning of November happens, usually a few days after November 1st, I experience a very sudden, overwhelming experience of seasonality, of the winter blues, almost to the point where I can't function if I don't take care of myself. So here's a little bit of information on a different kind of a calendar. Remember in August, especially if you live in more northerly climates, that you get a sense of the coming of fall. Suddenly some of the nights are cool, the weather is a bit drier than midsummer, the thunderstorms are a little less frequent. Of course, if you live in Florida or somewhere in the south, that's not true. But in northern climates where this impact is so very, very powerful, these are very, very important things to keep in mind. So stay in the light, live in the light. It's the beginning of autumn, and there are tools to help you, as they have helped me, to cope with the coming winter. I'm Bob Wilhelm. I have the winter blues. I hope I can help you.